Hello, this is SimzArt. I'm an illustrator and comic book artist. In this video, I'm going to show how to create artworks using digital watercolors in Clip Studio Paint. In today's video, we will continue the creation of our digital watercolor brush. We already saw how to create a nice brush size, how to set the brush tip, the spraying effect, the stroke, and the texture. Today, we're gonna check how to use the dual brush to create a watercolor edge effect. To do so, we need to click on To Brush Shape tab. Of course, activate the dual brush, select Subtract as mode, and change the brush size to 35. Don't forget to check Link to Main Brush Size. Now let's click on To Brush Size Dynamics and activate Pen Pressure with a minimum value of 0. I also like to remove the anti-aliasing to have a sharper look from distance. With this dual brush, we will create the edge we were talking before, and this is gonna be a very subtle effect that it's gonna give the right vibes that we're looking for. Now let's move to brush tip. Here we're gonna set the brush density to 20 and turn off to adjust brush density by gap. Also, let's turn down the hardness to the bare minimum. Now let's move to spraying effect. Let's turn it on, select the particle size to 25, activate to brush size, and change the particle density to 5 and spray deviation to 4. This will allow us to create that natural effect and also make it various enough and randomized. Finally, very important, in the two-stroke tab, don't forget to click to blend brush tips with darken, and also I will select the gap to the 3 dots icon. This is very important to make sure that our brushstroke keeps a bare minimum luminosity instead of becoming transparent if we keep pressed. I want to show what happens if we change the brush size of the dual brush. In this case, it's set to 35. This means that our brushstroke has a nice edge around it. The current brush size is 50 and the dual brush size is 35. If we keep the size of our brush to 50 and we set the brush size to 100 instead, the brush size and the dual brush size has a way different size, which means that the edge is no longer visible because our dual brush is too big. If we set instead to 10, the dual brush will be very small, which will make it very visible, and in this case not very realistic. I set it to 35 because it's almost half of the size of our current brush, which is 50. The fact that we linked it to the main brush size means that if we increase the brush size from 50 to 100, the size of the dual brush, it's gonna be 70, which is double of 35. In this way, we will keep having a natural edge, even if we change the size of our brush. If we unlink our main brush size from the dual brush, what happens is that if we change our brush size back to 50, the size of the dual brush stays 70, which in this case is way too big. According to our effect, we have to change these values and these options. I wanted to show so you can decide what's your favorite. Let's see what happens if we change the brush density. Setting it to 20, like I suggested, it's gonna give a subtle effect. But we can remove this effect, setting the brush density to 0, in this case to 1. So we will have no effect. If we set it to 100, the dual brush will create a hole in our brush stroke, creating an effect of edge very strong, almost transparent in the middle. Of course, this, according to your taste, can be more or less useful. Let's check what happens if we change the spraying effect of our dual brush. In this case, I set it to 25, so that we have a rugged look in the middle of our brush stroke that creates this nice watercolor edge effect. If we switch to 5 instead, we will have a lot of tiny dots because the single particles of our dual brush are gonna be very small. And you can see right here, if I zoom in, that is a lot of tiny dots sprayed in the middle of our brush stroke, which I don't think they're very realistic for our purpose. Going to 50, for example, which is double of what we set initially, it's gonna give a larger brush stroke to our brush, and this will give a more subtle effect of our edge. Again, this is up to your taste. Finally, let's take a look at what happens if we go in the 2-stroke subsetting and we turn on and off the 2 blend brush tips with darken. Default, I suggested to leave it on. In this way, we'll have a brush stroke that looks like this, because each individual brush stroke of the dual brush, it's gonna overlap on each other with a mode that is darken. If we turn it off, they will overlap each other in a normal way, which will create a very big gap in our brush stroke, like this. This could be useful for some specific effects, like a wash, for example. But in this case, I think it's better to leave it on. Okay, let's make a final test. First, I want to start with a simple brush stroke. We can control the opacity from light to dark. And then if we create a shape like black, and then we, in one brush stroke, also we make a new brush stroke with another shape. As you can see, they interact, overlapping thanks to multiply. Let's try with 2 different colors. I will select blue and then red. As you can see, the mixed area, it's gonna overlap in a very similar fashion way like real watercolors. But of course, like I said at the beginning of this video, this is not meant to look exactly, but just give some of the vibes we have when we use watercolors. I hope you find this information useful, and as always, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. See you next time. If you like this video, you can find more about my work on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. See you next time.